Hi guys, my name is Mayana, and today I thought it would be fun to do like a video essay type video. I am absolutely obsessed with video essays. I don't think that like my content is like video essay worthy, but I just want to give it a try. To have my phone as a microphone because I broke my other microphone, so I was like, why not just use my phone as one? So that's what I'm going to be doing. But today I want to talk about why Dan and Blair from Gossip Girl deserves to be endgame. For some reason last night I was like, I miss Dan and Blair. Like, I've been watching a lot of teen dramas. I was like, I miss my faves. I love them both separately and together. So I was like, I want to rewatch Gossip Girl. But I like rewatching Gossip Girl in the fall, and two, I don't want to sit through like 6 seasons. For some reason, I am terrible. Like, I think it's like the new streaming service era. I cannot sit through 22 episodes, like 45-minute long episodes for 22 episodes. I cannot sit through it for more than 3 seasons. And like season 4 and 5 is when the shit gets good. God damn. So I feel like TV fatigue or something, and so I am like really terrible at binge watching now. So I was like, you know what, there are some clips on YouTube. So I was up until 7 o'clock in the morning watching Dan and Blair clips, and do I regret it? Absolutely not. I had a ball at the time of my life. So I'm gonna tell you why Dan and Blair are a great ship. Okay, so disclaimer, I don't really know if I should, like, if I have to do a disclaimer, but just in case I'm gonna do one, this is just a couple that I ship. I am aware that Dan is a loser, and you know, Blair does deserve better, but I just ship them. I like them both as like separate characters. Dan is one of my favorite characters. He's a loser and I love him. He's a book nerd, and Blair is I feel like Dan and Blair's love child, basically, is why I love them. And so if you don't ship them, then that's fine. This video's not for you. But this is for the bitches that do ship them, okay? If you ship Chuck and Blair, I am not the one for you, okay? It's not even that I hate them because I want Dan and Blair to be together. I hate Chuck. I think he's an absolute creep, and he's a sick individual, like, genuinely. And like, the writers set him up to be like an asshole, irredeemable character in like the first episode, and then they were like, haha, psych. But what he did in the first episode was actually irredeemable to me. Like, you can't come back from that. Like, he needs to be in jail. So I just want to put that in there. Like, I actually hate Chuck. Like, when I was in high school watching Gossip Girl for the first time, it had already been running for a little bit. I think when I was watching it for the first time, it was probably like season 4 or 5 out. I don't know. But it had already been on for a minute. And I was watching it for the first time, and there's this specific scene that rewired my brain chemistry. It was season 1, episode 4. Serena was getting more attention from Blair's mom than Blair. And like, Blair had like this thing where she wanted to gain her mom's like respect and attention, and Serena had just got it effortlessly. I think this might have been the episode, y'all. I was only watching the clips. I was not rewatching it. But none of that matters anyways, okay? So Blair and Serena had just gotten to an argument. She was really upset, and like, Dan was standing there, and Blair like runs down the hallway, and she's sitting on the floor, and Dan walks up to her, and he sits on the floor with her, and she's like, did Serena send you? And he's like, no, like, I came on my own. And he like sits on the floor, and he just starts talking to her about like how he feels with his mom, and just like trying to relate to Blair. And that was like the first moment when I was like, oh shit, like, this actually has like some substance here. Like, I genuinely could not look at any other ship the same after that scene. Not that I really cared about any of the other ships, like Dan and Serena, don't care. Dan and Nate, that would have been tea, actually. But like, Blair and Nate, Chuck, and I don't give a fuck about any of them. I really only care. I mean, I would ship Serena and Nate, but like, only because I ship Blair and Dan already, so like, who's left? And then I ship Chuck with a prison cell, okay? It was literally enemies to lovers greatness, and I don't use the term enemies to lovers like loosely. Like, I hate when people use the term enemies to lovers in like a contemporary setting, because unless characters are trying to off each other, then like, they're not enemies. It's just hate to love. And like, I hate that like people use, I just hate it. But like, Dan and Blair were like actually genuinely enemies. Like there is like, I'm gonna talk about it later on, but there's like a whole plot line where they're going back and forth trying to ruin each other's lives to get revenge on each other. It ain't down. But like, that's enemies to lovers. That ain't no hate to love. That's what Blair did to Dan. That's enemy content, right? So yeah, I think she just didn't like him because he was like a loser, and like he just wasn't like, you know, in the core four, and he didn't like her because she was rich. And then also I think they didn't like each other. Like Blair probably didn't like Dan because Dan didn't like Blair, and she was like, okay, well, I don't like you either. And then it was probably like the same. They're very like similar but opposite at the same time. In the height of like the early 2000s ships, they just fit perfectly with like Pacey and Sethmer. Like I think the Sethmer parallels very well. Dan and Blair, they were like the perfect slow burn ship, and we could have had it all. But like most of the ships that I ship specifically, they never sail. They're never canon. All of my ships are like non-endgame, like Spuffy, Bayman. I ship a lot of other things that just don't happen. I guess I can see what the writers can't see. They need to put me in the writer's room, okay? Because I would have had y'all viewership up. So there's this episode, season 1, episode 19, where Dan and Blair are walking out of like the SATs together. They both are trying to contact Serena. Dan low-key just peeped that this girl was taking Serena's SAT test under her name, and he's like, who the fuck is this? What? So they're walking out together. They spot Dan's best friend, Vanessa. Hate that bitch. Anyway, like Nate is Blair's ex-boyfriend, and Vanessa is Dan's like childhood best friend. They both look like two lost puppies, like sad little puppies that's just been kicked in the heart, okay? And then they like pathetically look at each other and then walk separate ways. And it was just like, wow. I don't know what it is about that scene that really just does something to me. Like watch, it's just so good. My favorite thing about Dan and Blair is like how much Dan actually did care for Blair, and like that he looked out for her, and he would give her like unsolicited advice all the time. She never complained that it was unsolicited. Like she would actually sit there and like listen. And this was like early seasons too. Like he would just sit there and he would just be like, yeah, Chuck's kind of an asshole, but you know, you deserve better. And she would actually kind of like listen.
Blair, I need to talk to you.
I can't. Chuck's waiting for me.
I know, it's about that. Just, be careful.
Why? You said to be the opposite of careful. You told me to take a risk.
Right, I know, but it was bad advice, because when I said that, I was thinking of how things were for Serena and me. And we're talking about Chuck here. Not the same thing.
Yes, it is. And it's gonna be okay.
Well, maybe. Just before you say anything, make sure he's done playing games.
Like, even though she didn't see him as a friend, she still like took in his advice. And it kind of just reminds me of like boy falls first, girl falls harder trope. I'm probably going to be talking about tropes a lot in this video, and don't confuse me with like some girl that's like on book talk who like, no, please don't. I am on book talk, but I'm a girl who uploads videos about books. I'm not a book talker, okay? I just happen to talk about tropes because I feel like that's the easiest way to convey what I'm saying, okay? But don't be like, oh, this girl has TikTok rot brain. Not me, beloved. So this is where the good stuff kick in. So they're basically going back and forth, trying to get revenge on each other. I don't remember how. I think like somebody had framed Dan into like saying that he wrote this letter or like wrote this article. So yeah, somebody wrote an article about something, and it was like really like expose, and they used his name even though it wasn't him, so he says. And so it really just starts like this like back and forth trying to get revenge plot between Dan and Blair. And like sometimes it would go too far. Like for instance, Blair had lied and said that Dan had this relationship with a teacher and it actually got the teacher fired. It was like absolutely, and she knew it was a lie. Like she knew it was a lie. And it was also actually kind of funny because she like took this picture of them and like sent it into Gossip Girl, and then Gossip Girl is Dan, as we all know. Dan walks up to her and he's like, I know you sent that. So I was like, how do you know, Dan? I don't believe I know it's canon, but I don't believe that Dan is Gossip Girl, because there are so many instances where like he's absolutely gagged, like he's alone, he's absolutely gagged at the things that Gossip Girl has said about him, or like there's so many instances where he would have had to send in incriminating things about himself to Gossip Girl, which I mean, I guess if I was Gossip Girl, I would send no, I'm sorry, I wouldn't. This feud between them is so funny because there's a scene where they're doing the school play together and they're arguing with each other between lines, and they're supposed to have like this fake kiss, but like obviously they're not gonna kiss each other, like, you know, but they're like literally close to each other, like arguing, and everybody on stage is like, what? It's like everyone on stage is so fucking, it was the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Basically like fuel for enemies to lovers enthusiasts, and they just acted like such a married couple. Like literally, look at this clip.
No hormones, not yours or theirs, will get in the way of my cabaret.
It'll be fine, Blair.
Tell me they're not a married couple. And it's like, no matter how much Blair was mean to Dan or hated on Dan, he was always there to comfort, he was always there to give her advice or literally whatever he needed, and he let her know that too. Like it wasn't just like he vocalized that. For instance, like he was giving her advice on Chuck, and she said that she was always polite. She said thank you, and then after that she's like, your ice is melting, because she just has to have something negative to say. Like,
After what I've become, thank you for helping me see it, Humphrey. Your ice is melting.
I would never give you a 10 because I don't like you, so I'm gonna give you a 9 out of 10, you know, like that type of shit. So they're still kind of friends in season 3. Like they don't want to admit that they're friends, but they're always around each other. And he's always giving her advice on Chuck, which is like so crazy, because I feel like if this is your soulmate and this is the love of your life, you don't need to have people that you potentially see as like someone that you don't like to give you advice on your relationship. I feel like Dan kind of saw the kind of person that Blair was. Like Chuck made her feel insecure, and like she was just such a terrible person that nobody would love her but him. And it's like Dan showed her that like that's not necessarily true. Like you are a lovable person. It's just like she kind of refused to let herself see that, and it was kind of like an insecurity in a sense. At least that's what I saw. Season 4 and season 5 are like the seasons for them. Like these are like real tea, because they become friends and then bam, the best ship ever happens. Also, I was watching the clips and it just reminded me of how good the soundtrack was. Like I remember watching it in high school and be like, this soundtrack eats. Okay, like the soundtrack is literally amazing. The entire middle season of season 4, it's just them being friends but not wanting to admit that they're friends. They were hanging out all the time. They were meeting up for coffee. There's literally a Valentine's Day scene where they're on the phone with each other and then they're watching a movie together. That shit is like rom-com material. Actually, rom-coms wish that they were that fucking creative. And you mean to tell me that these two fucking idiots aren't in love with each other? When they're becoming friends, they don't want to admit that they're like that they are friends and that they like each other, so they actually end up becoming like a secretly dating trope, like on accident. And like I love that trope. It's one of my favorite tropes. And also, let's talk about how crazy this scene is.
And are, in fact, opposites.
The kind of opposites you do not attract.
Most definitely not.
No.
The world just wasn't ready for a Humphrey Waldorf friendship. It's been nice not being friends with you.
Let's not do it again sometime.
This is also the episode where they have their first kiss. Chemistry, people. This is chemistry. This is love. This is romance. And then the secretly dating plot was ruined within like 2 episodes. I love the secretly dating plot. I feel like I really wish I could have got a little bit more in this era, because I think that it really fit them. Basically, it was over because Serena found out about it and she was like very upset, which I find crazy because in the beginning of the show, Serena was sleeping with Nate, who was Blair's ex-man. Well, current man at the time. So Blair was supposed to marry a prince, but she ended up falling out of love with him because she felt like he wasn't like standing up for her, and he just wasn't the ideal man that she envisioned for herself. Even though she like being a princess is like Blair core, like Blair Waldorf core, but like he wasn't really matching up to being what she was. And like I kind of like this message. Well, it's actually crazy because I feel like there could have been a good message in there. Like, it really could have been like, no matter how much you want like a person and how perfect they may seem, if they aren't matching up with the things that you want in love, they aren't perfect for you. But then she ends up with Chuck in the end, so it kind of like throws all that shit out the window. None of that matters anymore. The first person that she ran to for help though was Dan, like at his door running for help. This is like season 5, I believe, and season 5 was like when the real angst and tea happens. Like season 4 is like the friendship stuff. They tried it out, it didn't work. Season 5 is the real tea. It's my favorite season or plot line in general because she's supposed to be marrying a prince. Like, who doesn't want to marry? Like, what girly girl doesn't want to marry a prince, right? Like, I would love to get my little tiara. I would love to marry. I'm gonna wear this for Blair's marrying Prince era. I would love to marry Prince, like most girly girls would, right? But she just finds herself thinking about this fucking loser named Dan Humphrey. Okay? Struggling author, struggling period. She's in love with him. She was reading his book and she catches herself imagining making out with him. Also, I love the early 2000s scenes of like when a character is like daydreaming and they're like, it's like a romantic daydream and they like basically are picturing books out of scenes because relatable. My favorite episode is when she's really pretty, like looking like a princess in her dress, and then she runs away with Dan, and then they're running around Manhattan. She's actually wearing like a I Heart New York shirt in this one, in that part, I think. And they're running all around New York, and then they go to a hotel and they start arguing like a married couple.
In case you haven't noticed, I'm not exactly having fun either. This was supposed to be the best day of my life, and now it's a big mess, and you don't need to be yelling at me on top of it.
If you haven't noticed, I've been helping you the entire time, and you're the one who's yelling. All right, now I'm yelling too, but you started it.
I hope someone yells at you on your big day so you know how it feels.
You already did. You remember the day my book came out and you blamed me for creating all your problems with Louis, and you never even read it.
I read the most important parts, the parts that never happened.
Like, girl, you are running away. You are on the run. And you're arguing with this man. Like, you love him. Please be for real. And then the episode, like, after that, they kiss again. They love kissing, girl. They love kissing. And for 2 episodes, they're just kissing a lot, but not saying anything until finally, episode 17, Blair kisses Dan. She takes the initiative and she kisses him.
No. I told Chuck he doesn't have my heart anymore. I realized it belongs to someone else.
Another favorite episode of mine is when she is about to get divorced and she is kind of sad about it because she doesn't want to give up being a princess as most of us wouldn't. And Dan does the ultimate romantic thing ever where he takes her to the Met steps and he gives her the tiara and she puts it on her head. And these girls run up to her and she's like, oh my gosh, are you a princess? And he's taking their pictures. It's something so romantic to me about someone who, like, and maybe it's because I love taking pictures. I love having pictures taken. Like, I know people say like to live in the moment, but I think there's no better way to live in the moment than to have pictures. And I think it's so romantic to have someone that wants to take pictures of you. And maybe it's coming from some like my family. Oh my gosh, why did me and my siblings, we went to like this media store that sold everything for $1, and I like put on this pretty dress and, you know, my nice hair, but I didn't do my makeup. And as soon as I get in the car, my brother's like, I'm not taking pictures of you. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then my sister gets in the car and she was like, you better not be in there all day trying to take pictures. Nobody has faith in me. I didn't ask for a single picture, mainly because I was so embarrassed that they clocked my tea. But so seeing Dan take those pictures of Blair willingly was just so romantic to me. Honestly, that episode is like where it ends for me. Like, that's usually when I turn it off, because after that it's like they basically start having relationship issues, and there's essentially like, it's not like issues, but it's very clear that the writers are writing this so like when they break up, it's not like out of nowhere and like people aren't like, Dan was better, even though he like obviously was. What about her other boyfriends? He may have been a loser, but to me, he was the better choice out of everyone else. Yeah, Dan says he loves her and she can't necessarily say it back. She pretends like she doesn't hear him. Oh, well, the princess arc is over, so I guess I can take this off. Dan says he loves her, but she pretends like she can't hear him. Then she is writing in her diary about how she's scared that she'll never love anyone as much as she loves Chuck. And Gossip Girl releases that, which, by the show's logic, Dan is Gossip Girl. So I think Serena was the one who sent it. Something happened with Serena. That was a little wonky. So technically, Dan already knew about it. And then he had to pretend to be shocked. And then break up with her. They basically break up and Blair goes back to the creepy loser Chuck. And then we enter season 6, this final season. It only has 10 episodes. Dan is the homeless loser that he is because he's a struggling writer. And he asks if he can stay with Blair. And she says yes. And then he kind of spends this time trying to win her back, as he should. And I think he should have won personally, but whatever. And then Gossip Girl exposes that Dan and Serena were cheating on Blair on like Thanksgiving when they were dating, which was like so fucking annoying because they obviously had to come up with something so that like people couldn't be like, oh, Dan was better because Chuck was such a fucking loser. Like even after the very first episode, like season 1, the pilot episode where he like does what he does, where it's really fucking, he essays 2 girls in 1 episode, he still does a bunch of other shit. Like he tried to sell her for a hotel. I think he tried to get her to sleep with his dad. I might have misremembered that. I watch a lot of crazy teen drama, so I might have misremembered that. It's been a minute since I fully rewatched, but it's either way, he still was like a fucking loser. And I think they had to throw in something to like be like, oh, like Dan's a piece of shit, she deserves to be with Chuck, whatever. And it's just so stupid because Nate cheated on Blair, Dan cheated on Blair, Chuck slept with Jenny. Like, my girl cannot catch a win. Like, all of these fucking losers, to be honest. None of them actually deserve her, if we're being real. If I'm being clear here, none of these men deserve her. But if she's gonna pick one of them. Then they find out that Dan is Gossip Girl, which is not canon to me because it doesn't make any sense. And it's really fucking annoying because a lot of teen dramas at the time kept getting outsmarted by their teen audiences. So they would just pull stuff out of their ass so that they could like shock the audience. But it really just ended up being fucking stupid. I actually want to do a video on that, like how teen shows kind of ruined their own shows because their teen audience was like a lot smarter than what they thought teens were. And like instead of being like Gravity Falls, like I remember being like watching Gravity Falls and like being on Tumblr accounts and like searching for clues and stuff like that, and people finding out like one of the biggest plot twists in the show. And you know what happened? They kept it. Because that's how you write a fucking show. And then they gonna make it really was like Gossip Girl was supposed to be Serena's brother, which just makes so much sense. And in the grand, I think they ended up getting rid of him like before season 6 or something like that, but like it made more sense in the grand scheme of things. Like it just did not make sense. But this isn't a video on why Dan isn't actually Gossip Girl. This is about Dan and Blair. Okay, so I just love them so much. Like I thought the banter between them was good. I thought that their dynamics throughout the show was good, like them like not liking each other and then trying to get revenge on each other and then going to college together and becoming friends and then being like, hey, like, are we friends? Like, no, we aren't friends, but they're hanging out every day and then actually like forming romance. Like I think that was just written like so well. How could you not love them? Like what? And I felt like Blair could really be comfortable and be herself around Dan, like just finding herself being like how nice she was and just how comfortable she was. And I don't know, and also Dan just seems like the kind of boyfriend that she needs, somebody that she can like boss around and like make watch movies with her and make watch rom-coms with her and like make him follow her around like a little puppy dog. That's why I love like the popular girl loser trope. I eat it so much, like the ship from Sex Education or Sethmer. Like it eats. And I think it's really crazy that Lead to Meester and Adam Brody are now married, and they're like they're both two of the most popular like teen dramas at the time. Like Blair Waldorf is married to Seth Cohen, and like I ship Seth and Summer, but like that will make it's basically Seth and Summer, but like with Blair Waldorf, you know? But yeah, if anyone is interested in any more of these other kind of videos, like I really do want to do more videos on like my failed ships, because I have so many. And then also a video on how writers for teen dramas like were really really underestimated their teen audience, and how them trying to make huge plot lines like ruined their show. I would like condense the title like a lot, but if you're interested, I have nothing but time, so let me know. I hope that you like this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, check out my other videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.